The Martinez family had built their reputation on practical success over 3 generations. Dad owned a successful construction company, Mom ran a thriving catering business, and my older brother Carlos had followed their entrepreneurial path by opening a chain of auto repair shops. They understood tangible businesses with measurable results. Pour concrete, fix engines, feed people, collect payment. Then there was me at 31, the family outlier who'd spent the last 8 years playing lawyer, as Dad liked to say. What my family saw was Carmen, the perpetual student who'd racked up massive law school debt only to work at a small legal aid clinic making a fraction of what her brother earned turning wrenches. What they didn't know was that Carmen Martinez had been appointed to the Superior Court bench 6 months ago, making her the youngest Latina judge in the state's history. The appointment had been kept deliberately quiet during the confirmation process, and I'd chosen not to share the news with my family until the swearing-in ceremony next month. They saw the legal aid clinic work, the modest apartment, the 10-year-old Honda, and constructed their own narrative about my failed ambitions and impractical career choices. Better to let them maintain those assumptions than endure months of unwanted advice about judicial ethics and public service responsibilities. The irony was spectacular. While they worried about my financial stability, my new judicial salary would exceed all their business incomes combined. While they questioned my career trajectory, legal scholars were calling my appointment a breakthrough moment for diversity in the judiciary. But to my family, I was just Carmen who'd wasted 8 years chasing impossible dreams instead of learning a practical trade. Morrison, Blake and Associates held their annual holiday party at the Downtown Athletic Club, a networking event that brought together the city's legal community, business leaders and public officials. Dad's construction company had done renovation work for several law firms over the years, which somehow earned him an invitation to this year's celebration. He'd been excited about attending, seeing it as an opportunity to drum up business among attorneys who might need construction services. The fact that his daughter worked in the legal field made him feel like an insider, even though he'd spent years dismissing that same field as impractical dreaming. Carmen should come with us, he'd announced over Sunday dinner. She can introduce us to the important lawyers, maybe learn something about how real legal careers work. Real legal careers. As opposed to my work defending low-income families facing eviction or helping undocumented immigrants navigate the legal system. It'll be good for her to see what successful attorneys look like, Mom had added supportively. Maybe inspire her to aim higher than that little clinic. So here I was, wearing my best dress that had seen better years, accompanying my parents to a party where they planned to network while simultaneously demonstrating why their daughter's career choices had been disappointing. The athletic club was elegantly decorated, filled with lawyers in expensive suits discussing cases, partnerships, and billable hour targets. Dad worked the room enthusiastically, introducing himself as a construction contractor and mentioning his daughter's legal background as a conversation starter. "This is my daughter Carmen," he'd say to anyone who'd listen. "She works at a legal clinic downtown. Still chasing those lawyer dreams." The condescension was subtle but unmistakable. Still chasing dreams implied that I hadn't achieved anything meaningful, just continued pursuing fantasies that more practical people would have abandoned years ago. 2 hours into the party, Dad had consumed enough champagne to amplify his natural tendency toward loud, definitive statements about life and career success. He'd cornered a group of attorneys near the bar, regaling them with stories about the construction business while periodically gesturing toward me. "The legal field is tough," he was saying to a corporate attorney who looked trapped. "Lot of competition, long hours, not much financial security unless you make partner somewhere prestigious." The attorney nodded politely, clearly trying to extract himself from the conversation. "My daughter here has been working at it for 8 years, Dad continued, his voice carrying across the immediate area. "Legal aid clinic, public interest work. Very noble but not very profitable." I felt heat rising in my cheeks as other conversations paused. Dad was creating a scene, using my career as an example of idealistic choices that hadn't led to practical success. "She keeps hoping something bigger will open up," he continued loudly. "But realistically, paralegal is probably her ceiling at this point. Maybe administrative work at a bigger firm if she's lucky." "Paralegal is your ceiling." The words hung in the air like smoke from a fire nobody wanted to acknowledge. Several attorneys within earshot looked uncomfortable. One woman actually winced. "Dad," I said quietly, "maybe we should." Nothing wrong with being practical, he interrupted, his voice even louder now. Some people are meant for big legal careers, others are better suited for support roles. Carmen's smart, but she doesn't have that killer instinct you need for real success in law. The group of attorneys was staring now, some with pity, others with embarrassment at witnessing such a public humiliation. I wanted to disappear into the carpet. That's when I saw him approaching. Thomas Morrison, senior founding partner of the firm hosting the party. Distinguished, silver-haired, one of the most respected attorneys in the state. He was walking directly toward our group with a purposeful stride. My stomach dropped. The last thing I needed was for the evening's most prominent legal figure to witness my father's assessment of my career limitations. "Excuse me," Morrison said, his voice cutting through Dad's monologue with unmistakable authority. I couldn't help but overhear. Dad turned, suddenly aware that someone important was approaching. Morrison's presence commanded immediate attention. Conversations stopped, people stepped aside, the entire area focused on whatever he was about to say. "Judge Martinez," Morrison continued, his face breaking into a genuine smile. "I didn't expect to see you here tonight. Judge Martinez." The title hit the group like a physical force. Dad's champagne glass actually trembled in his hand. "Mr. Morrison," I said, extending my hand. "Thank you for the invitation. The honor is ours. I have to say, your appointment to the Superior Court has generated tremendous excitement in the legal community. Youngest Latina judge in state history. Absolutely groundbreaking." The silence around us was complete. Dad's face had gone through several color changes, settling on a sickly green. Morrison continued, oblivious to the family drama he'd just detonated. "I've been following your work at Legal Aid for years. The Martinez precedent on tenant rights? Brilliant legal reasoning. And your immigration law expertise. The State Bar Association is considering you for their Human Rights Award." "Thank you," I said, acutely aware of every eye in the vicinity staring at our conversation. "When is the swearing-in ceremony? I'd love to attend if my schedule permits." "Next month. The governor's office is coordinating the details." "Wonderful. The judiciary is lucky to have someone with your background and principles. Your legal aid experience will bring such valuable perspective to the bench." Dad hadn't moved or spoken. He stood frozen, still holding his champagne glass, processing the fact that his daughter, whose career ceiling he'd just declared to be paralegal work, was actually a Superior Court judge. Morrison turned to the group of attorneys who'd been trapped in Dad's earlier monologue. "Have you all met Judge Martinez? Her work on housing law has influenced policy across 3 states. Remarkable legal mind." The attorneys who'd been wincing at Dad's assessment 30 seconds earlier suddenly wanted to discuss case law and judicial philosophy. The woman who'd looked pitying now asked about my transition from advocacy to the bench. Through it all, Dad remained silent, his face cycling through emotions I'd never seen before. Shock, embarrassment, confusion, and something that might have been pride mixed with mortification. Morrison eventually moved on to greet other guests, but the damage was done. Word spread quickly through the party that the young woman whose father had been loudly declaring her career limitations was actually the state's newest Superior Court judge. Attorneys approached me throughout the rest of the evening, some offering congratulations, others asking about my judicial philosophy or my plans for certain types of cases. Each conversation reinforced the gulf between reality and Dad's public assessment of my capabilities. Dad stood nearby, nursing the same glass of champagne, occasionally opening his mouth as if to speak, then closing it again without words emerging. Finally, as the party was winding down, he approached me near the coat check. "Carmen," he said quietly, "I think we need to talk." "Do we?" I asked, gathering my purse. "Judge Martinez. When did this happen? How long have you known?" "The appointment came through 6 months ago. The confirmation process took another 4 months. And you didn't tell us? Would it have changed anything about tonight?" The question stopped him cold, because we both knew the answer. Yes, it absolutely would have changed everything. He would never have made those comments about my career ceiling if he'd known I was a Superior Court judge. He would have introduced me differently, spoken about my work with pride instead of resignation. But he would have changed his behavior because of status and recognition, not because I deserved basic respect as someone working to serve justice and help vulnerable populations. We didn't know, he said weakly. You didn't know because you never asked what my work actually involved. You saw legal aid clinic and decided what that meant without showing any interest in my cases, my impact, or my professional development. Mom appeared, having overheard enough conversations to piece together what had happened. Carmen, sweetheart, why didn't you share this news with us? Because I wanted to see how you'd treat me without knowing. And now I know. Dad's face reddened. Carmen, I'm proud of what you've accomplished. I always supported your career. You called paralegal work my ceiling 20 minutes ago. The truth hung between us like a wall. There was no walking back what he'd said, no reframing it as supportive parenting or tough love. I didn't realize the scope of your achievements, he said finally. That's exactly the problem. You didn't realize because you didn't care enough to find out. The swearing-in ceremony was held at the state capitol, with the governor presiding and the chief justice administering the oath. My family attended, sitting in the front row, watching their disappointment